gaming sequels can be really tricky. For every Assassin's Creed 2, there's a Dead Rising 4. For every Bad Company 2, there's a Fear 3. For every Mass Effect 2, there's a steaming pile of manure like Mass Effect Andromeda.
People don't forget.
So you can't do the exact same thing again, but if you change too much, you might stray too far from what made the first one a hit. Sometimes, it's better to give the people more of what they loved with a few nice improvements to mix things up a little bit. BioShock 2 is a great example of this. Then you have the Mission Pack sequel, a title that began as an expansion to a game, but then evolved into a full-fledged standalone release. That's where Splinter Cell Pandora Tomorrow comes in. Developed by Ubisoft Shanghai and released for the Xbox in 2004, Pandora Tomorrow was a critical and commercial success. I remember, man, I was there. The game received ports, it made a ton of cash, and lived on for a while thanks to its brilliant, one-of-a-kind multiplayer mode, Spies vs Mercs. The following year, Splinter Cell Chaos Theory released, and basically Buzz Lightyear came along and Woody fell under the bed. Because Chaos Theory was so good, Pandora Tomorrow was all but relegated to a pleasant Gaiden game, a happy, fleeting memory. But not everyone forgot. Sadly, the game was delisted long ago, pushing Pandora Tomorrow further into obscurity. I had to pull a couple of maneuvers to acquire the PC port, and had to tinker with it a little bit more afterwards to get the bloody thing working. But once I got it up and running, I knew I needed to take one more shot at giving this beautiful work of art its flowers. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to use such gay terms about a game that lives in masculinity. Look, buddy, it's poetry, not a dick. Don't take it so hard.
Big boy.
Sorry about the NVIDIA overlay. The story in Pandora Tomorrow is told similarly to the first game, with news footage and some pre-rendered cutscenes, all of which are quite stylish. We'll discuss this more with the GameCube review of the first game, but Ubisoft Shanghai were quite good at making these flashy, Hollywood-esque cinematics. The plot itself is much more interesting than the first game, in my opinion. It adds a few new villains and a bit of foreshadowing for the third game's antagonist. It's fairly straightforward with a few nice twists. East Timor, a country in Southeast Asia, has been receiving military training from the US after becoming independent. Real quick, I just want to mention how much I enjoy the use of hyper-realism in this plot. This is where a storyteller weaves real-world events, sometimes historical figures, into their fictional plot. It makes it feel much more grounded and possible. And in a spy thriller story, it's much more exciting to feel like you're brushing up against reality. And in reality, East Timor seceded from Indonesian rule in 1999, and there were real anti-separatist groups that opposed this. In Pandora Tomorrow, the fictional group known as Dara Dan Doa, translated as Blood and Prayer, is one of these guerrilla units, led by charismatic militant Sahadi Sudono. Sudono is an obvious play off of Che Guevara, with the red beret and the cigar and all that stuff, but he's an interesting villain nonetheless. He's not complicated, a young revolutionary with a head full of steam. The game even references this when you eventually turn him over to the CIA, with a character mentioning that he has a childlike view of war. But rather, it's the story around Sudono that makes everything more interesting. Sudono has been working with someone identified as Mortified Penguin. This is a clever jab at Metal Gear, using an emotion plus an animal as a codename.
Wake up, Poindexter.
Mortified Penguin is in fact Norman Soth, a former CIA agent that went rogue. Soth and his mercenaries, along with Syrian terrorists working out of Jerusalem, have been gathering ND-133 containers to house the smallpox virus, which he then began distributing around the United States. The smallpox threat is Sudono's insurance policy. The title of the game, Pandora Tomorrow, is a phrase that Sedona must call in every 24 hours. If he's killed or captured, the call isn't made and the ND-133 containers are detonated around the United States, releasing the virus. Knowing that the US wouldn't dare take him out, Sedona brazenly fights on the front line, mocking the US and emboldening his own troops. Thanks to intel gathered by Sam during the game, Third Echelon, using ShadowNet operatives, is able to find and destroy all of the smallpox bombs, all except one. Soth and his remaining mercs have one last ND-133 container that they want to detonate inside of Los Angeles Airport, where thousands will travel to and from, potentially infecting many other countries around the world. As I said, Sedona is fascinating and all, and there have been real-world bad guys that were once trained by the CIA, but Sedona is really just kind of the charismatic face of the villainy in the game. He is, ironically, just an image for a t-shirt. He's ruthless, no doubt, and certainly a problem, but he's just a small player on the world stage, another weed to be pulled. Norman Soth is the real nasty badger in Pandora Tomorrow. But why turn on his own country? It turns out, Norman lost his leg to a landmine in service to the nation, and his motivation is purely personal. He's angry at the US for what, quote, they did to him, and he wants to pay them back. And you know what? It doesn't have to be anything more than that. He was traumatized and left disfigured, and he wants revenge. And he's using this young, angry kid in East Timor, Sedona, to stir up the nest while he works on his grand plan, the smallpox bombs. In the end, Fisher takes out Norman and leaves the last bomb for LAX security to find. They call in LAPD SWAT, get the EOD bot out, and the last threat is contained. Once more, Sam Fisher stays in the shadows and moves on like it was just another day at the office.
Douglas, it's been a while.
Fisher? My God, man, you're getting old.
You still in one piece?
Where are the rest of the SEALs?
I'm working alone. Haven't been Navy for a decade.
Then who you with?
I'm here on damage control. Just came to smash your computer.
Thank God. Oh, should I say the CIA?
Keep guessing.
You could play Splinter Cell 3, known as Chaos Theory, just fine, without any prior knowledge, but it's really fascinating going back to meet Douglas Shetland and hear him make subtle remarks about what the US has turned into and that kind of stuff. It also establishes that Sam and Douglas are allies and old friends. It shows how capable Shetland's PMC, Displace International, really are, something that matters by the time we get to Chaos Theory. Oh, and there's a gay character, by the way. You probably don't remember that. Do you know why? Because it wasn't a big deal. It's a passing mention in a conversation, a fact of life, just like it is in nature. Cohen likes girls. She likes what I like. Cool.
Like isn't the word. But don't ask me about it and I won't tell.
Sorry, I don't know if that's masculine. It only took me 20 years, but all in all, I really have a new appreciation for the story in this game. It's much more than just a stopgap between the first and third game. Ubisoft Shanghai really deserves a lot more credit than I gave them last time, and they really pulled off the old double antagonist thing, which is not easy. So, being that Pandora Tomorrow started out as an expansion, it's expected that the gameplay isn't radically different from its predecessor. Use your light meter to stay undetected, move slow, stay quiet, and either knock out, eliminate, or avoid guards altogether. The mechanics are functionally identical to the first game, but there were several quality of life improvements that really helped elevate Pandora Tomorrow above the first game. The invisible body detection system is still in play. Bodies left in the light will trigger alarms. Now, the light meter icon will flash when you've properly hidden someone in the shadows. Simple and effective. Also, when you approach doors or hatches, you're prompted to use lockpicks or the optic camera instead of having to fish through your inventory to use them. This was actually introduced in the GameCube and PS2 ports of the first game, but it was appreciated nonetheless.
Come out where I can see you.
Oh, and Sam can whistle now too. It's a piece of gear that doesn't require batteries, just those supple fisher lips. Another little addition I appreciate is that enemies will don flak jackets and Kevlar vests if you raise alarms, further punishing you for sloppy play. Another thing I didn't appreciate much before was the secondary laser for the pistol. I didn't use it too much when I played the Xbox version a few years ago, but I used it constantly this time, probably because I was using a mouse and it felt smooth as silk. And for what it's worth, you can open doors while holding a body and punch in codes with your keyboard. Small improvements that sped things up that much more. New to Pandora is the SWAT turn, letting Sam bypass doorways and gaps between walls without being detected. It is kind of just a gimmick, but it looks super slick and adds to that feeling of being a high-tech SIGINT ninja. It's kind of a shame they got rid of it after this one, honestly. Despite the various quality of life improvements, make no mistake, Pandora Tomorrow is just as punishing as the first game. You will die quickly, so you need to be careful. Trial and error is inherently frustrating, and this game isn't perfect, don't get me wrong. But anytime I felt stuck, I just had to stay patient and try a different strategy. Now, to be fair, I'm saying this having just completed the PC version with quick saves, which does alleviate a lot of frustration. I played the GameCube version immediately after, and although the checkpoints were mostly fair, some spots were really corny and had me missing that quick save. The best part of Pandora's gameplay is the level design. With a few minor exceptions, the levels in this game are phenomenal. As I mentioned earlier, I think that Chaos Theory came along and sort of washed Pandora downstream. And to be fair, the level design in Chaos Theory is better than the first two games put together, but not by much. And this playthrough of Pandora really cemented that for me anyway. The opening level in Dili is predominantly a tutorial, but it introduces the more pronounced natural Earth environments in Pandora. Shanghai developed plenty of excellent high-tech interior stealth locations, but I love the feeling of gently wading through lush, natural cover under the blanket of a starry night, and if you move too quickly, a flock of birds will angrily fly off, alerting patrolling guards to your location. But the highlight of this first level is easily the spotlight segment. The guard on Overwatch has night vision, so staying in the dark isn't going to work. The trick is to keep moving inside of the roving light. There are two reasons why this segment is special. One, it's clever and lightly subverts your expectations without asking you to learn a whole new mechanic. Two, it's quick, uncomplicated, and isn't reused again multiple times across the game. The Cryogenics Lab in France is another solid level that starts with subtle foreshadowing for the follow-on mission, with Sam sneaking through a very old, decommissioned train car well underground. And after you've gotten a taste of the Earth in East Timor, we're back in a very flashy, modern setting with this gigantic cryogenics room. There's an extensive tube system that holds frozen bodies of the dead super-rich that wish to be revived when the technology evolves. Yeah, let's hurry up and bring them back real quick. That's what the world's missing right now. This progresses to finding and interrogating a security guard, Francois Coldebuff, who has information on Mortified Penguin. He's barricaded in a processing room where brains are extracted, and if you look on the table, you'll see a body with a hollowed-out skull. Creepy. Mercs are gonna set off explosives just outside the door, and you get a bit of choice here. You can simply wander off and let Coldebuff die in a fire, or redirect a cold gas path to take down the Mercs, or just be a dumbass like me and waste a smoke grenade and a ton of bullets. The next two levels are back-to-back classics. The train from Paris to Nisa is one of my favorite levels in the entire franchise. When I think of Pandora Tomorrow, I think of the train. Right from the start, Sam fast roping from an Osprey to a speeding train is pure big dick energy, and we only go up from here. So, it kind of annoys me that some of the bland content factory channels on this platform didn't bother to look around the environments in this game for alternate pathways, yet complained about the linearity of Pandora Tomorrow. Despite running down this oblong metal tube, there's a surprising amount of variety for your approach. You can take your chances by going head-on, or slink under the bogey. Sam can also unlock the side doors to climb outside. Unlike rappelling down the Jin Mao Tower in Splinter Cell Double Agent, where you can't get spotted through the windows, this sequence retains a stealth challenge. Track lights will illuminate you as you pass by the windows, and if a civilian sees you, alarm, and it's over. If a mercenary sees you, gunfire, then an alarm, and then it's over. Then they added a train speeding by and almost knocking Fisher off. It's not a legitimate threat, but it adds great dramatic flair. It was Uncharted before Uncharted. Then it's time to locate Soth. Because of his run-in with a landmine, he's got a fake leg. Earlier in the game, Sam used the thermal goggles to see in the cryo lab and to locate landmines in Dilly, but we had already seen these tricks in the first game. Here, we use the goggles to scan for the prosthetic leg. It's such a clever way to weave the plot and gameplay mechanics together, and like the spotlight sequence, it doesn't overstay its welcome. This leads into tracking Norman down another car to record his phone call with the laser mic. It's classic Splinter Cell, and it never gets old working against the bad guys from darkness, just meters away.
I don't know, 80%, maybe 90. I just have a bad feeling about this train. I think our cover's blown. Hold on.
The level finishes with an excellent, over-the-top Hollywood action scene, with Sam sprinting back to the Osprey while a mercenary helo tries to shoot him down. From start to finish, this is a crisp, smooth level, and it's followed up with Jerusalem, another one of my all-time favorites across the whole series. This one feels just like a warm blanket. The incredible music, the lighting, and the atmosphere of the town with the civilians just living out their lives while you slip through. The environments are large and expansive, with several areas to hide away in and with multiple pathways to explore. This is also where you get your SC-20K rifle. The sequence begins by taking out a few thieves trying to knock over your contact, Saul. This was before these games offered a no-kill playthrough, certainly. What I love about this is that there's very little warning. You walk down and it's basically time to go. And it's done in real time, not with a contrived push A or B option. You can follow Saul and get a little practice with the weapon, or just run on back into the night. The verticality in Jerusalem is one of its best features. Sneaking along the rooftops, creeping straight through a home, leaving everything untouched like you were never there. Perfect. But when you meet your Shin Bet contact, Dahlia, the level goes up yet another notch. This is that classic spy thriller stuff that I love so much, meeting your questionable contact with a passphrase in a dark alleyway. Then, in the second half of the segment, you have to avoid being spotted by Dahlia herself, or she'll call off the mission. This is just a fantastic part of an excellent level, and then it's capped off with a decision. When Sam is locked into an elevator lift, Lambert tells him to shoot Dahlia right this second. Like with the robbers in the shop, this happens quickly and without a big video gamey prompt. Shoot quick or don't. If you don't, Lambert is pissed at you for not following orders. If you do smoke her, Fisher genuinely seems troubled by the order and is clearly forcing down some of his emotions while trying to remain professional. It's a great dramatic moment, and it seems to be sort of a rough draft of the choice-based trust mechanic that Ubisoft Shanghai would introduce in their next Splinter Cell game, Double Agent. Unfortunately, the end of this mission is kind of a corny gauntlet of some unavoidable enemies. Even though I love this game, the early Splinter Cells were definitely not meant to be action games, and that fact rears its ugly head here. Trying to pepper enemies in rapid succession while your aiming reticle constantly needs resetting is pretty dour. Indonesia is decent. I love being back in the gorgeous green stealth suit, slipping through cannabis fields, which by the way was altered in the GameCube port. Lol, Nintendo. There are trip mines to defuse, nothing special. I do like how there's a joke between sentries about being too drunk to operate them, with an actual payoff.
For tripwires, I'm drunk. I drank as much as you did, so that should make you braver. Remember, you need to fix the broken mine. Yeah, I'll do it now. Be careful, man. Oh no! Hey man, are you alright?
And the hanging shot with one arm is still one of the sweetest moves I've ever seen in a game. It's impractical as fuck, but who cares? The first half of this mission is decent, sneaking through the jungle, sabotaging Sidono's plane and whatnot. The second half reminds me of the daytime stuff that Shanghai went with in Double Agent, only a lot better, with actual shadows for cover here. You trail Sidono as he makes his way through camp, using your sticky cam to record a few of his conversations with his men to gather precious codes that you can't find otherwise. Again, Shanghai did a great job with the high-tech, cool guy moments in Pandora. And the level has even more hidden paths for the player to take, and taking your time to find these is really rewarding. It feels so nice to bypass a big open area and simply cruise on by. Unfortunately, a section I really didn't care for is the submarine in the Komodo shipyard. The lead-up areas are okay, but once you're down below, there are tight quarters, a no-kill mandate, and the good old one alarm and you fail trope. Let me tell you, on GameCube, without quick saves, this part was downright infuriating, but that's for another time. Following the sub, there's a brief mandatory action sequence. I was never a fan of forced fighting in the first game, but this part is mostly painless. The mechanics are suboptimal, but you're stocked up on health and ammo just before the battle. Thank you. And the fight's over in no time. Although it did cause my game to sort of shit the bed for a few seconds. Then we're back to stealth, but with another smart wrinkle. You sneak across town towards the TV station under a thunderstorm. It's fairly standard stuff overall, but the lightning strikes will illuminate Fisher, making him visible to the enemies. There's a similar concept in version 2 of Double Agent in the hotel with the rolling blackouts, which I loved. I appreciate the urgency and purpose this adds to my movements, and I always love when nature itself is the obstacle. The TV station itself is solid. Like the CIA from the first game, the TV station has that comfy atmosphere. Sam creeping through a warm, dry place at night with heavy raindrops pelting the thick glass all around you. Following and protecting Ingrid right as her cover is blown was pretty good, if relatively non-eventful. I just love those situations where the stress gets pressed quickly and you need to react. The level ends with Sam capturing Sidono alive in a broadcast studio. Now, this can go one of two ways. You can stalk him like Batman, picking off his guards one by one. This is a real challenge since you can't waste Sidono or even knock him out, and he's armed. Or you can just snatch him at the podium and nobody will shoot at you. It's pretty much the opposite of the first strategy. At last, Los Angeles International Airport, the final stage. Quite frankly, I think I undersold this level in my first review. The setting itself is amazing, a high-security mega facility on US soil with a no-fail, do-or-die mission. It's great. Soth and his mercs have infiltrated the building dressed as airport staff, and it's pretty grim finding bodies tucked away in corners from where they got their uniforms. They have the last smallpox bomb and have received their inoculations, and thus their body temperatures are elevated. The player needs to use the thermal goggles to ID the increased body temps, which is super clever. Like finding Soth by his fake leg on the train, this is a brilliant marriage between gameplay and plot. Hunting terrorists across the guts of LAX is awesome. Figuring out how to lure them into the shadows to crush them while avoiding the civilians that don't know any better. I did encounter a small bug on the luggage carousel where the bags just sort of looped in a circle through the wall. I don't ever remember seeing this on the Xbox version, but thankfully the luggage you need does come around, so it was all good. It's more of a curious remnant of how busted this port was, even after mods. Unfortunately, that's how a lot of PC ports were for console games. Good thing games now are finally optimized. So, inching through a terminal and some offices is fun, knocking off the bad guys as you go. But unfortunately, the final showdown against Soth and his remaining mercs is kinda lame. The bad guys are up on a catwalk, fiddling with the pox box, while civilians work below. If the mercs get wind of Sam, a countdown to detonation begins. You need to haul your sweet cheeks up there, waste the baddies quickly, and then run to the bomb to trigger the final cutscene. Even if you manage to sneak to the high catwalk undetected, the timer automatically triggers and it plays out the same, which was disappointing. So, sadly, this ending is a bit of a wet, squishy toot. Like when I'm
Giving it to your mom. Gaze upon my hairy, chiseled butt cheeks. Peak male figure.
But overall, the levels in Pandora Tomorrow are certified hood classics. It looks good too. Don't say it aged like fine wine. Come on, you can come up with something better. Avoid the cliche. Splinter Cell Pandora Tomorrow has aged like a fine wine.
Oh, you idiot!
Man, I love Unreal Engine 2. As a consumer, I understand the desire for more realistic looking games. I get it, I do. I've lived through multiple generations of consoles, and it was always exciting seeing the next evolution in games. But as time has gone on and we've sort of begun to hit the ceiling in gaming visuals, there's something to be said for a loss in artfulness and creativity in the desperate pursuit of bland realism. Obviously, Pandora Tomorrow doesn't look as realistic as Body Cam, for instance, but when I see Sam Fisher in his flashy new green duds, waist high in the Ombai Watar Strait, ready to sneak away into this very low-tech village, I find a little bit of peace. As discussed, a few of the levels are out on a bit of Mother Earth, and the more warm tones in Pandora really helped separate it from the predominantly cold palette in the first game. What can I say? I'm a sucker for warm colors, and that green suit is just the cat's pajamas. The dynamic lighting in the first game was pretty groundbreaking, especially for 2002, but Shanghai ratcheted things up another level for the sequel. It's more pronounced in levels like the opener in Dili, since these huts aren't super flashy high-tech buildings. There's no ambient light pollution, so a simple overhead light source cuts through the darkness like a supernova. And on that note, the same effect is felt here with the headlamp enemy. If he is suspicious, he'll turn on his forehead torch, and it's beautiful. And another cool touch, if you look directly at the light source, it will overload your night vision goggles, rendering them useless. I'm not gonna go off for another 10 minutes about it, okay? But man, I cannot overstate how much I appreciate the technical and artistic excellence that this kind of lighting and shadowing requires. Another addition that I really loved was the crumble animation when you knock out an enemy. Instead of the big old bop and flop from the first game, enemies go all rubbery now when you bash them, and Sam cradles them gently to the floor. It's so much more natural, and if it's done right, it lands the bad guys right in the dark corner. You don't even have to move their bodies, it's great. Another kind of quaint animation added is the one for Sam at medical stations. So now instead of the portable medkits, Sam tops off his health at designated wall-mounted units, and the neat little bandage animation helps to sell the effect. The sense of speed on the Hesperian train is incredible, and the animation of Sam, quote, fighting against the wind as he creeps along the top of the car is such a killer illusion. And when you're creeping along under the bogie, just inches above the track, sparks from the wheels splashing you along the way, it's just visceral and thrilling. This intensity juxtaposes nicely against the calm of Jerusalem, the gorgeous stained glass on the structure helping to softly light the path, and the incredible skyline at night overlooking the town as you train with Saul is oddly calming. Of course, I have to admit that the character models aren't doing so hot anymore, and the pre-rendered cutscenes have always looked a little weird, even for the time, and Sam Fisher now looks like Chip Hazard for some reason. But hey, at least they're stylish and flashy without becoming too over the top and fantastical. There's a blend of cool guy spy fiction stuff and the appropriate amount of camp that feels like a holdover from 90s movies. But sneaking through a terminal at LAX as that beautiful orange sky pierces through the gigantic windows, or wading through this thick foliage as you avoid the sniper's laser, this is an absolutely beautiful video game. Yes, it's aging, but most of the animations are still fluid and lovely. The color palette is diverse, but with a greater emphasis on warmth. I love Sam's green suit, and of course, there's still that beautiful chiaroscuro that, sadly, after the third game, seemed to, ironically, vanish.
Patreon.com/hypertensionjohnny. Get all these videos early, get exclusive videos, and download and listen to the music that you hear in these videos. Patreon.com/hypertensionjohnny. I have car payments to make and I need more butt grease. Go.
It wasn't your day. Well, I wasn't very good in simulation.
The NSA just called me. We have a problem in East Timor.
What kind of problem?
A big one.
So, to me, the character of Irving Lambert will always be the best with the voice of Don Jordan. He has the perfect timbre to match the design of Lambert. I'm not sure why he didn't return for Pandora, but fair play, Dennis Haysbert did a fine job. He's a great actor. He was excellent in Heat, and he's got a super bassy voice that reverberates nicely through the headphones. Everyone else does a fine job. Michael Ironside will always be the definitive voice of Sam Fisher, and he seemed to get more comfortable in the role with this game, to then basically become Sam Fisher in the third game, but that's for another day. And frankly, he's a bit better written than I gave the team at Shanghai credit for in my first review. He has his moments of menace, which I love, but he also comes across with that incredibly dry, acerbic wit when he's chatting with Lambert. The two of them are like an old married couple in this game, and I could listen to their banter all day. But, and I talked about this in my first review, there's a weird American accent with the NPCs in most levels. Like, not an American trying to do an accent, but just, "Hi, I'm an American voice actor in France."
How long do you think it'll take them to find the Frenchman?
What do you mean, Frenchman? We're all Frenchmen here.
I mean the Frenchman.
I griped about how weird it was, and it is, but it turns out that there was a reason. Evidently, the lines were initially recorded with actors that could depict the local dialect for wherever Fisher was. But Ubisoft, in their infinite wisdom, determined that audiences might not be able to understand these characters well enough and re-recorded these lines with generic American accents instead. Firstly, that's incredibly insulting. Secondly, subtitles? No? Anyway, that's why everyone sounds like they're from Ohio instead of Dili, France, and, well, okay, LAX it makes sense, but still, boo. At times, you'll hear people chatting in their native tongues, but it's fleeting. One thing I really despised is the mixing for the alert music. I know that sounds weird, but it's much, much louder than everything else, and it's obnoxious.
Where's the last smallpox sample?
Who says there's only one more?
You do if I squeeze hard enough.
At least the remainder of the soundtrack is solid. It's not mind-blowing or memorable in the way that Chaos Theory's soundtrack is, but the music that bumps underneath you as you're sneaking about is really a pleasure to listen to. To be frank, and you can keep being yourself, the rest of the audio design is incredible. If you settle for a moment and listen, the soundscape is really rich. Distant engines, local music and chatter, cats howling, dogs barking, and the footsteps of patrolling guards. If you have a graphically impressive game with poor sound design, you'd basically have a pencil outline. It's neat, but it's incomplete. Audio design, in a sense, is the color that fills in everything and completes the painting. God damn, do I love me some corny analogies. Woo! So, with how much praise I'm heaping on Splinter Cell 2, you might be wanting to go out and try it for the first time, or maybe you're itching to go back to it if it's been a while. Well, that's great, but it's not easy. You could play the PS2 or the GameCube versions, but I have a video coming that might convince you to sort of not do that. I have the PS3 version on an old hard drive that I downloaded when the HD collection came out, and it ran so horribly that I couldn't get halfway through it. Even if you go and buy the PC disc, it has DRM and it won't work on any modern operating system. Things aren't looking too bright. If you have an original Xbox and the disc, obviously you're good. If you have an Xbox One or a Series X and the disc, you're also good. And really, this is probably the most straightforward way to play this game, and those versions are fantastic, but the digital copies were delisted, and it's not sold on Steam or anywhere else for that matter. You can find it around, like I did. Google is your friend, so is ModDB. Some amazing people in the world patched and fixed the single player to run on modern OSs. And to those people, thank you. Seriously, thank you so much. But the question is why? Why is Ubisoft disregarding this game? There are many theories. It has sensitive topics related to East Timor, it's poorly optimized, and they don't want to spend the money to officially fix it. There was a licensing issue, on and on. Some even speculate it's because you shoot a,
J-O-O?
Hey look, I'm just telling you what I read. Personally, I think it comes down to Ubisoft needing to pay for something and just saying, nah. But nobody really knows, and it stinks. But what I do know is that if you can find the Xbox or the PC version, please try Splinter Cell Pandora Tomorrow. What more can I say? It's amazing. So, real quickly, I'd like to mention why I won't discuss multiplayer in this review. Firstly, I kinda said almost everything I needed to about it in my first review. The rest of that video is awfully rough. It was my second one ever, after all, but my opinions didn't change on Spies vs. Mercs. It was creative, inventive, unbelievably fun, and oftentimes hilarious. It's a multiplayer mode that I wished had caught on, and I often pine for it. But the big reason for the omission here is that a friend of mine who I had made reference to in that old review ended his own life in the summer of 22, only a handful of months before I made that video. June 4th, 2004, that's when my brother played his first match of Spies vs. Mercs. I was sitting right there. He played with a dude with the gamer tag XSolidX99. They became fast friends and they played games online together for 18 years, even getting together in person several times. Along the way, I became friends with Solid and I grew to love the guy dearly. He was, genuinely, the funniest person I've ever known, and some of the hardest laughs I've ever had were because of him. And he loved busting my balls relentlessly to get my brother to laugh. But the two of us talked privately many times, and he was also a genuinely sweet person that I cared for greatly. Near the end, I sent him a list of exercises for his low back, which was in chronic pain because of his job, and he was so appreciative, and he made sure to thank me several times, and I never forgot that. When I made the first video for Pandora, I was still grieving, and running around in those empty multiplayer maps just brought back a flood of memories, not only of Splinter Cell, but of Solid in general. Max. Max was his name. It reminded me of Max. Recently, I looked through old messages from Max on Xbox and on PSN, and spent far too long reminiscing and choking back tears. What really hurts about it is, as much as I loved Max, he and my brother were especially close. Quite frankly, he was more of an older brother than I was at a time when I really should have been there the most. It's a regret that I live with every day. And I regret even more that I will never be able to thank him for stepping in when I couldn't be there. But I realized, going through those old messages, I will never ever forget Max, ever. But I need to resolve that grief and that regret and move forward. So there are ways to play Splinter Cell online still. Fans have kept it alive, and I planned on getting a group together and making special content for this video and all that stuff, but the more I thought about it, I could never go back. Look, I love playing old games, obviously, and I would play Halo 3 or Unreal Tournament with you right now, man. I love reliving happy memories, and hopefully reminding you of a few yourself. But that's a memory that I want to keep as is, untouched.
That's real! That lives with us on Earth!